Hello and welcome back. This week's story is celebrating 100 years on January 4th, 2026, of Fredericksburg's very own Baby Jane Doe. Exactly 100 years ago, C.H. Grob's wife, who lived on Old Plank Road, came out to her front porch in the morning to see why their collie was barking. And to her surprise, she found a cardboard box with a black-haired baby girl abandoned. The baby had only a woolen cap and a diaper on, but was well wrapped in a man's woolen shirt, piece of cheesecloth, and a very well-worn cotton blanket. She was lying on a small pillow on the bottom of the box. Even though abandoned, it was clear someone had taken great care to ensure she was safe in the cold January weather. And we all know how cold Virginia weather can be. The Grobs called the Fredericksburg's only policeman, Sergeant J.C. Chichester, who became responsible to finding their parents and ensuring the baby's welfare. So he took the baby to Mary Washington Hospital, which was on the corner of Fauquier and Sophia Streets at the time, and then offered a $100 reward for the information on the baby's parents. Here's the story. Hi, this is Sarah, and you're listening to another episode on Ladies First, Not Really. Now, the original Mary Washington Hospital, because we're all familiar with it today, was actually started in the 1890s. And from around 1896 to 1930, it was this building, like I said, at the corner of Fauquier and Sophia Streets in Fredericksburg. At the hospital, the baby was looked over and weighed about 8 pounds. The nurses believed she was about 12 hours old. She was expected to survive with no ill effects from her short time on the front porch. And by the end of January, she was still at the hospital, and the nurses unofficially christened her as Miss Mary Washington. Her case created a lot of interest in the city, no doubt. And many donations of clothes and all the necessities were provided while she awaited a long-term home. Now, this poor sergeant, who single-handedly had to go track down this baby's parents, having no idea who she was still trying to find them. And he wanted to arrest them for abandonment, but he had no leads. He held the official position of legal guardian of the city's delinquent children. So he was in charge of either finding the parents or a long-term solution. Lucky guy. So from January, now it's March. In March, there was a break in the case. The baby's parents were identified, but the sergeant wouldn't provide their identities other than that they were not from Fredericksburg or the surrounding areas. Now that they know who the parents were, the authorities must needed to decide what to do. The parents wanted the child back, but the cops weren't sure if they should give her back considering the abandonment, and they were concerned that they would repeat the offense again. They also had to determine if they will consider it a criminal offense. The matter was expected to make its way to the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court in Fredericksburg before being resolved. But in the end, the charges were not brought to the courts, and the baby was reunited with her parents. Their identity or residence is still unknown, but the story of how this baby ended up in this situation is interesting and raises more sympathy for the parents than judgment. You see, the couple was poor, and I imagine very young. Even though we don't know who they are, I imagine this really young couple. The mother was very ill when the baby was born, and they weren't certain she'd be able to take care for the baby. Sadly, with the lack of quality health care, and it being very expensive, this was an all too common situation parents found themselves to be in. They decided the father would bring the baby to Fredericksburg to be cared for at the hospital. The mother knew he was taking her and thought she would be taken directly to the hospital. But somehow, when she heard that he just dropped the kid off on some stranger's doorstep, she freaked out and demanded he go get her. The husband, no doubt was now panicking, went straight to the city police and told them what happened. He had no idea abandoning the baby on a doorstep would warrant criminal charges. So from March to April, they visited often, and the city determined they would take care of her, and the mother had recovered. Unfortunately, we'll never know who this baby is or who she grew up to be. With little information on the family, I'd like to think the mother of being, like I said, very young and ill and having to go through childbirth, most likely alone with just her husband to help. If a mother was present, they most likely would not have felt the need to give her up. So this poor young father does what he thinks is best, and then the poor mother freaks out knowing her brand new baby was dropped off on a front porch. I wish I knew who they were, their situation, and the name of the baby. But alas, we are left to wonder and enjoy the sweet story of Fredericksburg's very own Baby Jane Doe, lovingly named Miss Mary Washington, and who was the first baby registered in the city's 1926 vital records. This baby would be 100 years old on January 4th. So we don't know if she survived or not, or what became of her, or if she even knows this was her story, but it's a fun story for Fredericksburg that we didn't even know. Hope you enjoyed. For more information, visit my blog at rebelliouscorsets.com.